Hello and welcome to another episode of Leading with Women by EgoMonk. Joining us today is Professor Smitha Ranganathan. She's a professor at SP Jain School of Global Management in Dubai, Mumbai, Singapore and Sydney. She has a wide range of expertise spanning digital marketing strategies, business development, healthcare brand communication, strategic marketing roles both at regional as well as global levels. A regular contributor to journals and media publications, Dr. Smitha has also been the recipient of multiple awards, including the Young Management Faculty Award instituted by AIMS and also the Bhumika Iconic Women of the Year Award for 2017. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Smitha.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Rai. Thanks for having me here.
No, it's our pleasure. So, to just set context, the first question which I would like to begin with, how do you see marketing strategies evolving in the healthcare sector post the pandemic?
I think this has been a favorite question in most of the panels that I've been part of lately. Just to give you the context, I think the pandemic is still not behind us. Okay, so I will be very careful of being very prescriptive in my views on this, right? But a few thoughts. I think more than anything else, the pandemic has exposed our vulnerability as human beings and our vulnerability as providers of services to people. Okay, so I do basically think that the healthcare sector, if not anything else, has worked so hard to do their best. But also, I think different players who are part of the healthcare sector are now going to be taking a relook on what are those aspects which really needs attention, whether it is to do with, so when you're using the word healthcare sector, we are referring to a gamut of industries, all right? We are referring to hospitals, which are the service outfits. We're also referring to pharmaceutical companies who are going to give us means or interventions to help cope with a crisis of this level, besides a whole lot of other ancillary services, be it diagnostics or be it imaging and a whole lot of stuff around it. So I think once this pandemic is behind us, I think there's going to be a very strong reflection in terms of figuring out how can I scale up, all right? And how can I scale up with a sense of immediacy and urgency? So this is one trend that I think is going to be there. The second aspect is going to be, how can I manage to leverage the power of digital, okay, for seamless interventions and support? So you will actually find that among multiple industries, when you compare healthcare with many other industries, you'll find that the adoption of digital has still been quite abysmal when compared to many other countries. So you will actually find that digital is going to be far more pronounced in terms of connecting with stakeholders and also trying to give them the right sort of advice or right kind of outcomes. So I think this is how I look at it.
No, and I think in the current situation, especially last year, we did see an extreme boom in digital services because people did understand that that is the only way forward. But in this scenario, when we know that marketing strategies are utilizing more and more digital platforms, how do they balance between personalization and privacy?
Again, I'm a strong believer in something that marketeers of my generation, right? So I'm the 1990s marketeer. We really abused people's attention, okay? So when I try to teach marketing, I'm very conscious of this fact that the current cohort understands that the audience's attention is actually a privilege. No amount of me buying that across in terms of media buy can ever give me a license to misuse it. So I think the key, game changer in terms of managing or maintaining privacy and privilege in terms of personalization is all going to be about permission-based marketing. To what extent can I not look at my customers as another ID to whom I could sort of carpet bomb with content rather than understanding that, hey, here's a customer who has a very finite human set of needs. And how can I personalize my outcomes for this person? So I think making sure that I don't take the customer set for granted, and also to ensure that there is a strong sense of consent and permission in the whole marketing game is what's going to be the game changer in the next decade.
So, in the current context, you are an educator, you are a professor at the SP Jain School of Global Management. A lot of students reach out to you. They are from diverse backgrounds, they're from diverse industries, and not only that, they're from diverse geographical areas. So, in this, as somebody who is imparting not just educational values but also moral values, what do you think is your foremost responsibility?
I think the role of a teacher today, right? And this is something that is a privilege that I have, is to be a mentor, to drive values, not being preachy for sure, but to stand for values that go beyond what a Coursera or a Udemy can ever translate to a student. Okay. To be very honest, right? To teach digital marketing, you don't really need me. Okay, because you could always subscribe to one of those courses. But why is it that you need me is, can I give you the exceptions rather than the rules? All right. So that's one perspective where I think I have a strong role to play in terms of the content that I deliver. Besides that, as we were just discussing, I think it's about the values that you want to embody, the values that you want to stand for, because I also find the current crop of students that I must have taught over 8,000 students over the last 8-9 years, is they come with tremendous appetite for success, okay, which is great. But it should be appetite to make a difference for yourself and to the world around you, and not just some pseudo metrics of success. So for me to reinterpret what success means to a lot of them takes a lot of my time, which I'm very happy to do willingly.
So, you clearly have a lot of passion towards your students and your role as a teacher. You're also passionate about handlooms and the weaver community. So, how do you effectively switch contexts and contribute to both corporate communication as well as handicrafts?
Actually, there is no switch. It's the same fabric. It's exactly part of the same fabric, because I believe in the power of human minds and human hands. All right. Okay. So when I'm trying to work with either my cohorts or with the brands that I consult with, right, in terms of crafting a communication strategy, what are we trying to do? We are trying to create a narrative or a voice for what I stand for. In terms of my work, I would say work, or rather patronage to weavers, that's exactly what I try to do. I try and give a voice to the unheard. And I'm not trying to sound very philosophical in saying this. How many of us actually know the ones who made our clothes, right? We like fancy tags like Zara. I'm not against any of them, or Fab India, or any of the brands, but the real hands behind these are highly underpaid, living in very, very difficult situations. So I think for me, it's never a switch. It's pretty much part of my existence, that I want to celebrate the narrative of ideas and intentions. That's exactly what I try to do with the handloom patronage that I practice. So if you actually see, I'm not sure to what extent does the Zoom window do justice to what I'm wearing, but you'll see the curtains behind me is a recycled 23-year-old sari from Assam. It's called the Muga silk. Okay. The sari that I'm wearing now is an indigo dyed handmade Dabu print sari, which has actually traveled across 3 states before it has reached me. I try and work as much as possible to genuine weaver clusters. Okay, and I use the word genuine because there are a lot of resellers, which is not at all a bad thing, but people who ensure equitable passing on of revenue and profits back to these weavers. So I try and work with them and try to encourage them in whatever way possible. the current state of affairs of weavers, and I'm going to say this even the pre-pandemic, okay?
All
There
right.
are two specific issues which really plague the industry. One is an extremely, as I said, an unequitable distribution of what we pay for reaching their hands, okay? Because of several middlemen in the entire channel of distribution. This is a real issue. The second, the absolute lack of pride among the next generation of craftsmen to want to take this up. So when I would go to these clusters, okay, as part of some of these handloom trails, and when we speak to the craftsmen who actually weave a sari which could take them 180 days to make, and I'm not kidding, 8 hours multiplied by 180 days is what it would take to make a phenomenal AI code, maybe, but that's what they take to make your sari, which goes into your wedding trousseau. When you speak to them, they would say that I don't want my son to take on this. They are far more happier working in a big bazaar, in a far more urban context, drawing 25,000 bucks at the end of the day. The government, in all fairness, has in the past and even currently tried to empower weavers in a number of ways. Okay, and this is irrespective of the party in power. There have been very honest attempts which have been made, but the question, are they good enough? Is it all that we can do? Is perhaps another discussion altogether. But I think fundamentally the onus rests on us.
All right.
To try and make sure that we have a sense of ownership, accountability, and pride when we are dealing with these sensitive clusters. What I mean is this: would you ever have the, pardon my French, nerve to walk into an H&M and bargain on their latest trench coat? But you would do that in a Delhi Haat. You would do that we've all done that in a handloom bazaar, right? So I think, in all fairness, the moment you start seeing a sense of value and intrinsic pride in the products that you want to buy, I think we'll have a larger heart to embrace them in a better way.
We did speak about this section of the population whose needs and wants are just not mainstream, and we do not know. And in this sense, we know that you and I are definitely more privileged than them. So, in this, how do you process your privilege and in turn leverage it to uplift other women as well as minorities?
It's a great question again. I don't think we need to uplift women, quote unquote. Okay. Because I think a woman naturally is very empowered the way she is. Okay. But I understand clearly where you're coming from when you're trying to use the term uplift. Let me give you a specific case in context. I've again very consciously taken up working with women run startups. And I do this pro bono. So if there's a woman in your circle who needs support in terms of helping either scale up or come up with a brand strategy for her startup, I would do that pro bono. I would never charge a woman whom I'm working with. When I'm trying to work with a lot of women who've got some phenomenal ideas, as simple as, can I come up with a 100% salad based meal for a community or a neighborhood which is teeming with elders and diabetic patients, to that of a woman who is trying to empower other weavers? Okay. One thing that stands out is 9 out of 10 times, a lot of women are actually struggling to balance their sense of I vis-a-vis the sense of we. How can I seamlessly fit into my family context, make sure that all my stakeholders are happy in a family, but at the same time, how can I express the I in a very non-threatening sort of a way? Irrespective of men, women, minorities, or any other marginalized section of the society, I strongly believe in being very inclusive as a person. There is always space for every voice in my class, because my class is my world, or the meetings that I'm part of, however contrarian that might sound. So I think having the heart space and the head space to accept something which is very different to what you're conditioned to have accepted and growing up with is a very good leveler. I hope that answers your question, because I think inclusiveness or inclusivity is what is going to make us exclusive over the next few years to come.
On that note, since you talked about a pro bono startup that you run, as a final question, how difficult is it for women to break into the entrepreneurship industry successfully?
It's actually very funny, because I have found women entrepreneurs coming from 2 or 3 very interesting backgrounds. First, extremely successful in a professional context, who decided to break free of this, huge heritage on their head and say, I want to, do my own stuff.
Do something on my own.
Yeah. I'm sure many of us have got that bug, right? So that's one. Second, a woman who's been really pushed to the end, may not be just financially, but there's a huge identity crisis that she's dealing with. And she looks at entrepreneurship to break free, break even with herself, right? So that's the second context that I've seen. Third, are women who have had this passion to do something for themselves, not just because they want to leverage the outcomes, but they want to support people around them who look up to them. So these are 3 very, very different contexts of women that I have met in my journey of trying to work with startups. And all of these 3 kinds of women come with very, very powerful intents, okay, which just needs to be channelized in the appropriate direction for magic to happen. Now, how difficult is it? The intent is super strong, but where do they really get challenged? When they don't see immediate results. So I think one thing that we need to try and work with women entrepreneurs is the average time that it's going to take for you to find outcomes, all right, or results is going to be slightly more challenging than what you would expect for a male-run company, which is a fact. Now, there's a beautiful HBR article which talked about this, and that said, when venture capitalists interview women vis-a-vis men for investment decisions, the flavor of the questions itself are so different. Women are asked things which is more about proof of concept, but men are asked more questions which is about the depth of their dreams. So the fact of the matter is, your narrative or the biases that run around women run businesses and men run businesses, not just in India, but across the world, is pretty deep.